Welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Gonzalez Cumberbatch, and I know firsthand that it takes a village to raise a child, but most importantly, that it takes a village to uplift a mother. A mother's village is necessary and can take up many forms. Consider this podcast as part of your motherhood village. No matter the season of motherhood you're in, every conversation will give you more tools to add to your parenting toolbox, and you'll feel supported, inspired, and uplifted. So let's get into an informative and empowering conversation. Hello and welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I am on with a very special guest. I have Mrs. Jessalyn Burden, who is the founder of Inspired Tutors. Jessalyn, how are you this evening?
Hi, great. So good to be here.
Why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself before we jump into the meat and potatoes of the conversation?
I'm Jessalyn. I actually moved to Florida about 2 years ago with my husband. I've been married for about 2 years. I have 2 German Shepherds, so big fur baby mama. And I worked in the public school system for about 2 years. And then last summer, I decided to kind of go off on my own and start Inspired Tutors.
I'm so excited to talk about that. But before we jump into that, I like to have my icebreaker round. What is your favorite book or one that you would like to recommend? And people normally ask, like business, professional, anything that you feel that like really motivated you, inspired you, that you want someone else to feel inspired and motivated.
I have been a big reader my entire life. I love to read. I was reading, a book a day as a kid, And when I got to college, I didn't really read very much, at least not books that I enjoy. It was mostly textbooks. And so about a year ago, I got onto Book Talk, of course, and started reading all of those books. So lately, I've really just been reading novels, things that I enjoy that people have recommended to me. And I'm also right now going through Atomic Habits, which has been really recommended to me. And it's something that, I try to read a couple chapters a week and highlight and stuff. So that has been really encouraging because I'm having to start, creating my own schedules every day. I'm my own boss. So definitely Atomic Habits. I'm not finished it yet, but really, really good.
It is a really good book. What is your fun, guilty pleasure?
Food. I would say food. Sweets. I'm a big sweet person. I'm gluten intolerant and lactose intolerant. So sweets, chocolate, a little bit of candy here and there is something that I really enjoy.
Awesome. Who and what has been a part of your village? The podcast is a motherhood village, and I know you don't have children. And I always say it takes a village, and it really does. And I think whether professionally, personally, even more so when you become a mom, but who has been an integral part of your village, both personally and now professionally?
Well, I'd have to say my number one is my husband. He's the one that encouraged me to do this. He has been supporting me financially as well through all of this. And then my parents have been there, every step of the way.
That's awesome. And where are you originally from?
So I was born in Alberta, Canada. That's where my parents were born, raised, and married. And we moved to Mississippi when I was a toddler. Then in 2007, my parents and me and my 4 younger siblings moved to Romania.
Wow.
So I lived there up until 2016 when I moved back to Mississippi for college.
Wow. I know. So we know each other, little backstory, because we're part of a great mastermind group called Inner Power Partners. And that's kind of how we met. And I know you have that your story ties into where you're at today. So let's dive into that. What was your journey of diving into a special education teacher? And then where did your love for reading and education come from?
It's kind of funny because I graduated high school in 2015 and living over in, Eastern European country, college wasn't such, a huge thing. The parents weren't always trying to get you to take the classes and, all the things so that you could go to a good university. And my parents hadn't gone to college, so it wasn't a big thing on my mind. So I took a gap year. I was the oldest of 5. I wasn't ready to, cross the ocean alone. So I started, my dad did ESL, English as a Second Language, with adults, and all of those adults wanted their kids to learn English from a native English speaker. So I started teaching younger kids English. I taught piano. I've, volunteered at summer camps and things like that. And then I was also homeschooled. My mom homeschooled all 5 of us, K through 12. Mm-hmm. So that with there being 9 years between me and my younger sister, whenever I got older, I helped my mom out a lot with the homeschooling. And school always came pretty easy for me. But I had 3 younger brothers who really struggled, had ADD, ADHD, dyslexia. And so my mom had to do a lot of research to try and help teach them the way that they needed to be taught. And so I think that's where it kind of started. Mm-hmm. And then I went to university. I got into student teaching. I actually started off just as an elementary ed major. And then after I got into the school, I realized that my university offered a dual enrollment kind of program to where I could do special education as well and come out with 2 degrees. Wow. And once I started getting into the schools and just seeing those kids that were left behind sometimes, or weren't given really what they needed, I just kind of realized, I was like, I don't want to be just an elementary ed teacher. I really want to focus on those really struggling children.
Sure. And I know there's a lot to unpack there. And again, I'm very fascinated with that journey. But you said Romania, to go from Canada to Romania. Do you speak the language, and how was the culture shock of going there back and forth? And what did you really take from being in almost like a third world country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it comes to, so tell me some of the values you learned from there, and what was, I guess one of the biggest thing, like you said, was the education portion, where in the United States, everything is like college, and it's your SATs from young, and, the next class, and everything really is really from elementary school, college. We have honors courses. We have National Honor Society. What was that like of being in a third world country, coming from Canada, and then from there to the United States? Tell me about that experience.
Well, so it's called, what we're called as children are called TCKs, third culture kids. And because my parents were raised in a culture, and then we lived in the US, and then we also had the Romanian culture. So outside, I was in the Romanian culture. And as kids, we never took classes to learn how to speak the language. We just learned on the street with the kids, Sure. And kind of talk like natives pretty much. And then
Okay. The language.
Yes. I just kind of blinked for a second.
You're okay. You're okay. Basically like the culture shock, and coming from, you were saying that, of learning the language on the street, and then how it all integrated of you being Canadian, but then Mississippi, and then Romanian. How did that shape you? What did you learn? What did you take from those experiences?
I think it really gave me an open mind. I really did not fit in whenever I moved back to the US, because even though we had lived there for a while, my parents were Canadian, and then I was homeschooled, and so my parents were able to kind of shape what we were taught and stuff. So Sure. I wouldn't say I was naive, but I was a little bit, coming from, a third world country, Sure. To the States. But I don't know.
Yeah, like how did it really, what do you look back at? Because I've been to Africa, and we stayed in Mombasa, which is a beautiful beach town in Kenya, and that changed me completely, because although it is considered a third world country, I guess Kenya, oh my gosh, I was blown away at the way the people lived, and how quick my husband and I kind of settled into we didn't have AC. We didn't have a running AC center.
We didn't either.
And we just slept with the window open. We dealt with it. The electricity would go out occasionally. All right, well, we lit some candles, and we had a beautiful time. I mean, I rode camels on the beach. It was fantastic. And I remember coming back and saying, oh my goodness, I don't want, the first world problems of like worrying about my Starbucks order and all the things. So that's what I mean of like looking back. How do you think maybe it shaped you of things that maybe that you appreciate and the values that you bring now into your teaching and how you work with children?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to figure out how to word it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But something that I did not realize coming back to the US is that everybody uses credit cards.
Oh.
And so I always wondered how people could, just afford these things. It's like everybody in the US must be rich.
Yeah.
I felt that, and things are
That's
different.
Mm-hmm.
Things are different now. We do have Starbucks and we're getting more malls and things like that. But definitely as a younger child, the focus was on different things, very much community.
Mm-hmm.
And we were always outside with people. Romanian people are very, very hospitable and so genuine. And so I think I also took that.
Sure. With people that have nothing, same thing in Kenya, they have nothing and they're like, sure, here, have this. And I'm like, but you have nothing. And what are you giving me?
Yeah.
You're some of the nicest people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That, I've noticed a lot of that. And so I still am a little bit that third culture kid. I've been in the US for 7 years now. So I think I'm definitely a lot more American.
Sure. I think we get acclimated to the American way, I guess, per se. And I can imagine someone coming over because it's just embedded in us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just interesting to hear how that kind of changed you, but that makes sense. Community, the children, probably a lot of playing and kids just kind of, you have what you have and you make do with it,
right. And I got really good with, because we traveled a lot. My parents were always having conferences in different countries and stuff. So I always had to be able to talk to strangers. And I think that definitely helped me whenever I moved back and I didn't know anybody, and especially working in the schools and talking to parents,
dealing with different personalities.
Exactly. People from other countries. I was able to relate because in South Florida, there's a lot of people from other countries and bilingual children and stuff. So I was able to, I am able to relate quite a bit too.
Sure. So now we'll fast forward, which I'm sure there's a lot in between there, but we'll fast forward to you're a teacher, you're a special education teacher. You realize, oh, wow, I want to help. But then what made you pivot from leaving basically formal education to starting Inspired Tutors?
I think it was two main things. It was passion and mental health. We have to touch on that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My first year teaching was in Mississippi, and it was fall of 2020, if that tells you anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was...
Wait, you said that was your first year teaching?
That was my first year teaching. I wasn't able to finish my student teaching. I did half the spring semester, and then it was lockdown. And so everything kind of went online. So everything, all of my classroom experience to where I was actually, the teacher was between January and March.
Wow.
And so...
and you go in as this incredible high, because high in the sense of like...
No, absolutely.
Like you're like, oh my God, this is my first, I'm doing this. I'm going to rock this school year.
Yeah.
And then COVID comes.
Yeah. And so our start date kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And I was, so stressed out. I did a little bit of summer teaching and everything. But then, all the sanitizing in between classes and everything. I had a few very special children on my caseload that year, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
For a first year teacher, and then moving down here, I was one teacher for over 50 kids. It was supposed to be me and two other teachers, but they couldn't find anybody. And so, you hear about the teacher shortage, and it's
very real.
Very, very real. And so, I would be called to meetings, or I would be called to sub. And, you know, as the ESE or the special education teacher, I have a legal, you know, obligation to give these children their interventions and meet with them a certain amount of times per week. And it is on their IEP, you know, it is legal.
Sure.
And I wasn't able to, it was absolutely impossible.
So I'm going to stop you right there because I want to paint this picture for the listeners. So ESE, and what does that mean again?
Exceptional student education.
Exactly. So I went as part of the Rotary Club to volunteer for ESE classroom down in Sunrise. And I was blown away because I had never seen the actuality of what ESE teachers have to go through and how they're kind of considered as like, she's like, yeah, this is what we're working with. And there's a lot of sensory things with these children. So you telling me that you're 1 for 50 when she told me she has like a case teacher and she has all these things is bananas to me, because I just have one child who, you know, is 5 years old and, you know, whatever, but he has his moments and he's not an ESE, you know, or a special challenge young man. And I could not even imagine being 1 of 50. So I just kind of want to paint that picture for those who don't know. And to your point, a lot of these children do have special needs of really one of the big one is the sensory. I know that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of them, aren't they older too?
Yeah, I had K through 5. So I had pretty much the whole school. They were all considered inclusion. So most of them were in a regular classroom. So I would push in and pull out for interventions and stuff. But, you know, for ELA and then for math, they had to be seen 2 to 4 times per week.
Sure. And then even dealing with the parents. And I say that because, again, in talking to this particular teacher, she said one of the difficulties was some of the parents would be in denial or particularly think that the teacher is supposed to solve all of the problems or help with all of the issues that their child has without possibly taking responsibility. And hey, look, you know, again, I know there's single moms, there's parents with multiple children, and I can understand the challenging aspect of having a child with some special need or a challenge. But we shared that and she was like, it's a lot. So speak on, because then you eventually left. So I can understand why, you know, we don't have to maybe dive into all of that, but I know you mentioned mental health. What was it particularly that affected your mental health that you were like, that you felt like you did, that you were like, okay, enough is enough. I cannot do this anymore.
I think one of the big reasons was the guilt, because I have a huge passion for helping these kids and I can see how much they need, you know? And when I really wasn't able to give them what they needed, you know, there just weren't enough hours in the day. I would go home and I would feel guilty, you know, because it is the IEPs, the individual education plans, they're legal documents. And then, you know, I was a newlywed. I kind of am still a newlywed, you know? And I would get home, you know, take the dogs out, cook dinner, and go to bed because I was so mentally and physically exhausted. And so I got to see my husband like, you know, an hour or 2 during the day. So that was another big reason. I was like, I really need to focus on my family right now.
Sure. And then when you made the decision to leave, did you have a plan of what you were going to do with Inspired Tutors? Or was it something that came afterwards that you're like, listen, for my mental health and I'll figure it out? Or did you kind of have an idea of while you were in it?
So actually during COVID, my husband built me a website. And we had actually talked about doing something like this before I even got into the public school system. I'm very glad that I did get into the public school system. Just, you know, I could just get in. Yeah,
absolutely. I think every door, every opportunity is a reason for something. And I don't think anything is ever a waste of time.
No, absolutely not. And so I'm really glad that I did that. And the beginning of last year is, you know, we were really struggling. I was really struggling, you know, mentally and everything. And my husband was like, you have the website. He was like, why don't you just go for it? I knew that I wanted it to be virtual and I knew that I wanted to focus on those ESE kids. Obviously, you know, I have worked and will work with any struggling child.
Sure.
But I just felt like there needed to be something out there that was specifically, for,
Sure.
not just, a lot of people are looking for tutors that will, oh, can you help my kid with this homework assignment?
Sure.
Or something like that. And, I've worked with so many children who are like 3 and 4 grade levels behind, and they just can't get caught up because, they're having to work on the homework that they're given.
Sure.
And so, if they're in 5th grade, but they're really struggling on phonics and vowel sounds because they never really got that foundation, like that's what I wanted to focus on.
Sure. And what do you think is so, and I think I know why. I spoke with a speech pathologist. So we talked about that and the importance of reading. And in my mind, I think reading is the foundation for a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
Critical thinking. And I'll let you talk that because I know you of what you do with Inspired Tutors. But I do want to just ask one question. In your opinion, what do you think would have kept you staying at the school? What needed to change? And what is more needed for support for the teachers and students? In a high level, just in your opinion, if you've been like, if I had this, I think it would have made it easier, or teachers really need this.
I mean, really the biggest thing was the teacher shortage. If I had, so technically what it was supposed to be, there's supposed to be 3 of us. I was supposed to have like K through 2. So I would have had about 15 or 20 students.
Sure.
That would have been completely doable. I had a great principal and assistant principal, and our ESE coordinator was amazing. So I definitely did have that support that a lot of other teachers don't. That, and then, I mean, I'm just going to say it, the pay.
Of course. Yeah.
Because living in South Florida, I didn't want to get stuck to where, I've been teaching for 20 years. I only have 5 years left, and I'm just staying for the pension.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to start something that could eventually grow and support my family so that I can work from home when we have children. And,
sure. No, and I think that's fair. I mean, I think there was an article I saw the other day that a teacher said that she left teaching and now works, dare I say, Costco or Walmart making, because she said she made more benefits and money in the area she was at. And I'm like, how are we here in this time of the world that, someone who deals with children in and out. I remember we had, when my son was born, we had a nanny. We were very fortunate. It was a friend of a friend that knew someone. And I told my husband, I was like, yeah, I heard we could give her like time off. And he's like, why? I'm like, because she's taking care of our child. I want her to have a mental health day. I want her to know if you, and he was like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And I'm like, yes, like she's taking care of my child. So to that same mindset of saying you're taking care of the next generation, like more support and more respect is needed. Because then if the parents are busting their butt trying to work 3 jobs, and then the parent, then who's taking care of these kids? But that can be a whole nother podcast. So I want to bring it in. So the reading part, what made you focus on the reading, and how impactful is it for parents to read to their children, and how early should they start? Why the reading aspect of it?
I think it's really just the foundation of academics, of life, start reading. I want to read to my kid when I'm pregnant, in the womb. They need to be hearing that, it expands their vocabulary. It gives them critical thinking skills. It is so easy to pick out a child who reads at home or has had their parents read to them. There's such a huge difference just in really all aspects of their academics and even social.
Sure. No, I agree. Credit to my husband. I mean, I'm an avid reader, and I think my husband gotten into an avid reader when he's older, because he was like one of those students that like slept during class, but he was a student who didn't learn by teaching, right? And he would pass his test because he's like, I don't learn that way. I'd rather go home, read it, and then I got it. Yep. So anyway, but we're both readers. And that was one thing we said that we wanted to do for our little guy. And I mean, my son, like I said, he's 5, and he's been speaking clearly and with a vocabulary, I think, since he's 2 years old.
Oh yeah,
and
the speech pathologist will tell you that as well.
Oh yeah, he's like actually and technically, and I think even more so is the critical thinking, because I really do try, not all the time. And for the moms listening, know when it's a rough night, I'm like, listen, dude, like we have 2 seconds and we're done. But when things are going smooth and serious, in all seriousness, like I'm like, oh, well, why do you think that's like that? And what do you think is this? Asking questions, like it's mind blowing the difference that makes. So yes, was there anything else you wanted to say as far in the reading aspect before I go
that's kind of because I know there are so many working parents where both of them are working. Yes. They don't have a lot of time. Point. So that's actually the reason I started my YouTube channel.
Yes, talk about that.
I didn't really expect to be making a YouTube channel. I, get anxiety. My sister has had a YouTube channel since she was like 10, I think. Oh my God. And she's so good in front of the camera, she's very comfortable, and I'm just not, Mm-hmm. And I was working with a student, and we were working on vowels and vowel sounds, and, I just came up with a quick little thing where we would say, the vowel sound in a word, and we would just kind of like pound it out on the table,
Sure.
And I was like, I'm just going to film myself doing this, put it on YouTube, and then add it to my website. Mm-hmm. And I kind of started with that series with short vowels and long vowels. And then I started doing just read alouds, because maybe, parents don't have time to read to their children. So I didn't want to just have the book on the screen. I wanted to be me in a chair with the book, showing the pictures.
As if you were right in front of them.
Exactly. And they started just getting a lot of views. And I was like, wow. Okay, so maybe this is something that people need. And so I'm going to continue with it. So every month I'll kind of pick a different thing to focus on. Sure. Right now we're working on certain high frequency words. Like I just have this little decodable reader. I have a whiteboard behind me.
That's awesome.
We do the words, and then I'll put the book under my camera, and I'll literally like point out the words and have them read it, and then I'll say it, like I'm actually, so that there's something out there for parents who maybe don't have enough time.
No, I think that's brilliant. And have you gotten any feedback from them? Have you gotten any feedback of them saying, in the comments, like, oh my God, this was so helpful, or thank you for this, or?
More in person. Right now, I think it's because my settings are for children. They don't allow the comments.
Oh, that's good.
So there's no negativity there.
No, that's awesome. But no, that's great to know that you have an impact that way. And that's genius, because unfortunately, there are the parents who don't have that time. And again, very, very fortunate that my husband and I both can be there for the most part during bedtime and to read. Why is it so important for parents to get involved though with their children's academics? Again, I know we say it's busy, but and for busy parents and for single parents, but why is it so important for them to get involved in some aspect of their children's academics?
This is another thing you can tell, in the school which children have, because if the parents care, a lot of the times the children care. And I'm not saying, because there are some parents that I've seen that, just ground their kids if they get a B, or, like put a lot of pressure. And then you have 8-year-olds with terrible test anxiety, and
it's a whole thing.
That's a whole other thing.
That's crazy.
But, there's confidence.
Sure.
They have confidence in what they're doing. They're not afraid to fail. And I feel like they just all around do better.
They thrive.
They really do.
What could you say? And I just asked this because I'm in a lot of the mom groups on social media. And
I am too.
And you see a lot of like the things about teachers and this teacher. What would you say to a parent who wants to maybe connect with their teacher, right? Like, what should they do to make sure that there's a connection there and it's not like, okay, you're watching my kid and bye? Because I think that would make a difference.
No, it does. Because I had parents where I would tell them, hey, email me, or, sometimes I would give a parent a phone call, even if like one of my students had a really good day, like, hey, and so it definitely goes both ways. And I think you have to have the mindset of we're a team. Because sometimes the teachers are like, oh, you're just the parent, you don't know anything. And sometimes it's, vice versa,
Correct, Yeah.
And so I think knowing that that you're a team, reaching out, always being open to, feedback, and both ways.
Sure.
The teacher should, I have had plenty of, IEP meetings where we'll ask the parent, hey, what are you seeing that works at home that we can do in the classroom?
Nice. Yeah.
So that we're all on the same page. And when the kid knows that the teacher and the parent is on the same
Makes a
page,
difference.
it really makes
No,
a
and
difference.
I love that, of looking at it as a team. And I think in any relationship, parent-child, parent, spouse, friendships,
Absolutely.
our parents, our grandparents, and teacher, you have to think, if there's something you're trying to do together, we're a team. And then how are we going to solve this together? I think
respect.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother. And I was going to say, instead of going in with on both sides of maybe a little like confrontational or defensive, and I think both sides need to kind of understand each other's position a little bit better to kind of go. And I think just got to lead with compassion and empathy for both sides, right? I think nobody knows what's maybe going in the child's life behind closed doors in the home, and vice versa, because teachers are human, right? You have your own problems, you have your own thing.
And they also have 20 to 30 other children, and
Correct.
they're doing
personalities and things. Exactly. So thank you for highlighting that. Should schools offer more bilingual studies and classes, do you think? Do you think because I have an issue. My son goes to a bilingual preschool, and in my mind, I'm like, we wait till like we're in high school to have to take foreign language or whatever class. I'm like, that should be when we're younger so that it can sustain. Like, I've forgotten all of my years of Spanish in high school. So,
I know. Yeah. I took Spanish and French in high school as well. Definitely. The school that I worked at was a dual language school. And so the kids would have, morning in Spanish and afternoon in English. And then the next day it would switch. And it was crazy to see how they could switch back and forth, and I was able to do that as a kid, it really helps them out. But there's also a downside when a child has a learning disability, because if they're not strong in one language, maybe the language that they speak at home, they can get really confused and just plummet on the English side and the other side. So I've had to, take children out of the dual language part and put them just in the English or just in the Spanish, so that they can really flourish in one language, and then maybe, in middle school go back. But for kids who,
for general,
right. I think it's great. I loved being able to.
Do you still speak? Do you still speak?
I do. I'm actually reading a book in Romanian right now, just because I don't want to lose it.
That's awesome.
But I'm jealous of my sister who moved there when she was 1 and is now 17.
Oh, so she has it. Yeah. And I think I think there's something beautiful of being able to speak multiple languages, which I wish, again, we did with our children from young.
And especially Latin based, because, working in a Spanish speaking school, I can understand quite a bit.
Sure.
And then my parents learned French living in Canada.
Wow,
and so just, especially a Latin-based language, it gives you,
opportunity to learn much more. 100%. So tell me all the services that you provide with Inspired Tutors and where people can find you.
Okay. So my website is inspiredtutors.org. I'm on all the social medias, Facebook and Instagram, and they're just Inspired Tutors, as well as the YouTube. So pre-K through 6, it's all virtual, and I try to focus more on those foundational skills. So reading, writing, and math.
Okay. And people can reach out to you on your website. They can book consultation.
Yes. I do a free consultation just to kind of see if we're a good fit for each other, pretty much. If I'm what you're looking for, and if you're what I'm looking for,
Sure. Which is important.
Yes, it is. I've realized that is, starting my own business, that I can do that, being my own boss,
Yeah.
And the start off, I've, got my email on there, and then there's also just a contact us button.
Awesome.
At the bottom there. So.
And when should people start looking for a tutor? And, the benefits of the one-on-one tutoring, like when should they, obviously I would imagine before it's too late, but when should they start reaching out to saying, I think I need to hire you?
If they're in a regular ed class, you can usually kind of tell by, the end of the first 9 weeks, how they're doing, if they're struggling, if they're falling behind and stuff. So definitely, you know, whenever you start noticing that there's kind of a trend, or, you know, if you know your child has a learning disability and they're just already behind, you know, like I'm working with a student right now, he's in 5th grade, but he's more on a 2nd grade math level. And so we just start on the 2nd grade and we're going to, any growth is growth.
Sure.
You know?
Nice. And then what are ways that I always love to ask this question, because I think it's so important than just to say like, what do you do for self-care? But what do you do to release? What do you do to reset? And what do you do to recharge yourself now that you are kind of, like you said, you know, you're trying to get your schedules. What do you do for yourself? Because I can imagine you're now running a business, right? It's different now.
Yes. Very different.
There's more things that you have to be on top of, and you know, marketing and YouTube channels and all the things. So what do you do for yourself?
I mean, the main thing is reading. And sometimes I'll try to take an hour in the middle of the afternoon just to read, even if it's just a novel, you know, just to get out of my head. I have a lot of anxiety and I'm in my head a lot. Yeah. And so sometimes I have to do that. I love listening to music or watching a show and cooking. I love to just get in the kitchen, put my headphones in and detach. And then I really love working out. That's become whenever I was in the public school, I was doing a lot of, you know, yoga and Pilates and stuff. And I started lifting weights last year. Nice. So that's also, you know, kind of recharges me, you know, gets me out of my head. And I feel so much better, you know, when I've worked out in the morning. I just feel like I'm ready for my day.
That's awesome. Jessalyn, do you have any final thoughts to the podcast community, maybe to a mother listening now, maybe that has a children who might be having some issues with reading or anything, any encouraging words or any final thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have children of my own, but I think, you know, just follow your instinct and follow your gut, you know. You know, there's nothing wrong with tutoring. And there's nothing wrong with quote unquote labels, you know. I feel like if you can get any type of help to help your child succeed, then it's only positive. You know, it's, you know, maybe they get an ADHD diagnosis or dyslexia or anything, but that doesn't define who they are, you know?
100%.
And so, yeah, just follow your instinct.
No, I love that. And actually, that's a really good point, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions behind tutoring and a lot of negative connotations that are associated with tutoring. So I'm glad that you said that. So for any mom listening, I like that you said that like, it's okay. It's just going to help them. And, you know, your child can be an amazing reader, but maybe math, or can be, you know, amazing at this. I know there was something I could never do, because I was really good at math and reading, but not chemistry.
Oh, jeez.
I couldn't understand it for like the life of me.
Don't ask me anything.
Nothing. I mean, I literally went from, you know, and I struggled with that. And to the point, it kind of played with my mind, because I was like, why am I not getting this? But I wish someone would have told me back then, like, it's okay. You're not going to be perfect at everything.
And the learning styles.
Correct.
You know,
that is true.
You could go into a whole nother thing about learning styles. And that's something I've tried to talk about a little bit on my social media. Is, you know, I was a visual learner. I was really good at reading and writing. Math, not so much. My brother was auditory. You know, he could literally listen to something and he would do better than me on a test, you know? And so taking the learning styles into account is huge. And your child doesn't have to be amazing at everything, because who is?
Oh my God. Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And I think what I'm very happy of is like, there's a lot of micro schools and homeschools. And I know we didn't talk about that too much, but I love the emergence of the micro schools, the homeschooling pods, because it's breaking away from the traditional learning environment, which, to your point, not everybody learns that way.
Right. Like, and it focuses on the child's strengths and their weaknesses.
100%. And I think I had someone tell me, they're like, yeah, but then you're making them this. And I'm like, no, I'm like, if you're focusing on your strengths and then knowing where your weaknesses lie and you can help there, it's only going to help the child more, especially if you're giving that one-on-one care, that one-on-one.
Right, exactly.
I always like to talk about this. Quick mention before we part here. I had a woman who was on my podcast, and she was an OBGYN. Her husband was, I think, an anesthesiologist. So both doctors, and they had 4 children, I want to say under the age of maybe like 8 or 9. Yeah. And she just saw that they were developing differently. Her one daughter, like traditional writing, boom. Her other son loved music, and she just saw that she was getting a lot of like he wasn't sitting still, and there were things. And then her situation, she's Haitian and her husband's white. And she was like, in her mind, she was like, oh, I didn't want them to be the Black child in the classroom that got, reprimanded more, or that was,
right.
Because they're acting out when it's not the behavior. It's just because he's not learning this way.
Well, and children aren't meant to sit in a desk for 7
Correct.
hours a day.
So what she did is she quit her OBGYN job, became a homeschooling, which her whole family were like, what are you doing? You went to school. All 4 of her children graduated from Ivy League schools.
Wow.
And in the conversation, that actually, I'll send that to you because it was a really amazing conversation in how she did that. And her one son, she allowed him in the morning to have music. And her daughter started a traditional, let's say like 9 to 3, and she did the order of everything. But her son, who loved music and everything, she would allow him to do that first.
One of my brothers, he would start off with, and he's amazing on the piano now, like way better than I ever was. But he started off the day with music because he really struggled with,
focusing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there is something there. And I was just blown away at the story because she was like, I had to really advocate for my children. And she's like, now, obviously not everyone can leave their job to do that. So she was very fortunate, but she was like, I didn't want my children to become another statistic and then drop out, because it's frustrating when it really was just, to your point, they didn't learn that way or they couldn't get it.
And they're not going to become antisocial or anything like that.
Yes.
People are always, oh, you were homeschooled? You don't seem like a homeschooler.
But I think also, I'm older than you, so I think that generation of back then, it just was what it was. Very few people homeschooled, and it had the connotation of like almost Little House on the Prairie.
Yes.
Do you know that show?
Yes. Oh, yes. I love that show.
Oh yeah. And my mom, and I remember growing up, watching it. And I think it just had that connotation, like as if it's in like the backwoods of somewhere, which we know it's not. So to see it emerge, and I think COVID has pushed it, I think is a beautiful thing, because then I think more children will thrive.
Yes, for sure.
That maybe back then a lot of dropouts and stuff were because they were challenged and didn't realize they had dyslexia or didn't realize they had other things.
But it is a lot of work. And you have to do a lot of research and all of that. So it's not just...
Well, for those listening, parenting is hard. And that is the hardest part about parenting, is that because it is so hard, and you really have to advocate for your children when you're still trying to figure out your own stuff. But Jessalyn, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I will put all of your information in the show notes where people can find you. So thank you. And I'm just thankful to share your message and continue to do what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this impactful episode of the Motherhood Village podcast. Subscribe to my show so you'll never miss a future episode. You may also rate and review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode with someone that can use it as part of their Motherhood Village. Remember, your village can take up many forms and you do not have to do it alone. Connect with me at themotherhoodvillage.com. Blessings to you for love and light.